A relationship with the right referral partner could be a game changer for any B2B company. So what if you could reverse engineer these relationships at a moment's notice? Podcast. Invite potential referral partners to be guests on your show and grow your referral network faster than ever. Learn more at sweetfishmedia.com.
You're listening to B2B Growth, a daily podcast for B2B leaders. We've interviewed names you've probably heard before, like Gary Vaynerchuk and Simon Sinek, but you've probably never heard from the majority of our guests. That's because the bulk of our interviews aren't with professional speakers and authors. Most of our guests are in the trenches leading sales and marketing teams. They're implementing strategy. They're experimenting with tactics. They're building the fastest growing B2B companies in the world. My name is James Carberry. I'm the founder of Sweetfish Media, a podcast agency for B2B brands, and I'm also one of the co-hosts of this show. When we're not interviewing sales and marketing leaders, you'll hear stories from behind the scenes of our own business. We'll share the ups and downs of our journey as we attempt to take over the world. Just kidding. Well, maybe. Let's get into the show.
Welcome back to the B2B Growth Show. I'm your host for today's episode, Logan Lyles, Director of Partnerships here at Sweetfish Media. I am joined today by Vince Beese. He is the CEO and founder of Sales at Scale, as well as the Revenue Exchange. Vince, how you doing today?
I'm doing great, Logan. Thanks for having me on the show.
Hey, thanks for making some time. Really excited to jump into learned as a consultant and a seller yourself, and this analogy of red zone selling that you're going to break down for us today. Before we get into the topic, Vince, I would love for you to share a little bit about yourself and the team at Sales at Scale with our audience to give a little bit of context for the conversation.
Sure, I'd love to. So I've had a career over the last 20 years where I've been mostly working for startup companies and primarily technology or SaaS companies. And so I fell in love with startups early days, late 90s, going into the dot-com bust. I've held numerous different sales and marketing leadership roles, so responsibility of growing revenue and the different revenue lines within these organizations. So about 2 years ago, I took that experience from working 18 years at startups in that capacity, and I created this firm called Sales at Scale. And at Sales at Scale, we help basically growth companies or startups with their go-to-market execution and strategy, right? So we try to find gaps in their process and what they're doing, close those gaps to eventually accelerate revenue growth. That is our goal to work with our clients.
Mm-hmm. So you were involved in tech and tech sales before it was really cool, right?
Yeah, I one of my claim of fame is I was probably one of the early adopters of Salesforce.com. We actually, I remember I was at this company called LivePerson, and we switched from Siebel. We did that Siebel migration to this little unknown company called Salesforce.com, and I think we used to call SaaS ASP, Application Service Provider, before it was called SaaS. So yeah, I'm dating myself, Logan.
I love it. Awesome. Well, Vince, all of your experience and expertise, I think, is going to lend itself to some good takeaways for the audience today. So let's dive right in of this idea of red zone selling. And obviously, sports analogy here. Let's kind of set the stage. Closing a deal is a lot like scoring touchdowns. So we're going to get into some specific examples and applications, but tell us a little bit about this analogy as you see it.
Yeah, I created red zone selling as a metaphor to closing deals, right? Using football as the analogy. Because, like in football and like in sales, a lot of people in football, they can move the ball between the 20s. But once they get to the 20, can they get it into the end zone? And I'm not talking about field goals, I'm talking about scoring touchdowns. And the same thing in sales. If you look at the stages in the sales process, a lot of sellers can get the deal to close to closing, but can they get it to actually sign? They can have the sale, but can they do the close? So I got a great question for you, Logan, to kick this off to highlight my point here. Can you name the top 5 teams last year in the NFL when it comes to scoring in the red zone?
I know it was definitely not my Denver Broncos because they had a horrendous year last year. We're in rebuild.
Definitely not Denver. So none of these, maybe one of these will be a surprise. Teams for scoring in the red zone, and let me be clear, scoring touchdowns in the red zone, where Jacksonville at 69%, Philadelphia at 64%, New England at 63%, Green Bay at 62%, New Orleans at 61%. So two of those teams went to the Super Bowl and one of those teams won it. So what does that say about the importance of scoring in the red zone? If you're not scoring touchdowns in the red zone, you're not making it to playoffs and you're certainly not winning the Super Bowl. So it's that simple. The best sellers, right? The guys that are really performing, guys and gals that are really performing, I guarantee you that their close rate, when they get close to closing, let's say, their last final stages of the process, they're close to 100% close rate from there. So that's how I put this kind of methodology together, is thinking about how, the successful football teams do it, and the same thing with successful salespeople.
Yeah. And that makes a lot of sense. I'm a big football fan myself. So, and I've heard, I think it was Sunday Night Football, they were talking about, a lot of teams can move it between the 20s, but that percentage of touchdowns in the red zone really makes a big difference. And so taking that analogy full circle to your sales process and how are you getting deals across the end zone, or across the goal line, I should say. So Vince, the thing that you wanted to talk about here is if your goal is to really increase your red zone efficiency as a seller, then the key is to have a plan and execute. And as we talked about a little bit in your background, you help, growing organizations develop their sales strategy, their processes. Tell us a little bit about, what you see there, where some people fall short, or what areas they should be focusing on to make sure that they have a plan to be able to execute in the red zone.
Yes, let's talk about that a little bit and break it down here. So when I say process, it's what is your process from a lead to close one or close loss, right? So you got to get the one or the other. And I break down, if you look at that field, we don't have a visual here, Logan, but if you're looking at the field, I break it down into 3 zones, right? There's a yellow zone, a green zone, and the red zone. And what the yellow zone means to me is, like, before you can start selling this zone, the yellow zone, you need to find if there's a fit, right? So I've been given a lead, whether I developed myself or I was given from a BDR, SDR. I need to find out, 1, if it's qualified, 2, if there's a fit before I can do anything else, right? So that's where we're in the yellow zone. Let's work together and let's see if there's a fit before we advance the ball, right? So that's the yellow zone, first zone. Once I figure out there's a fit, mutual fit, an agreement, and potentially a use case there, right? And how they want to utilize the technology to solve a problem, we get into the green zone. And picture the green zone kind of between the 40s or the 40 to the 20-yard line. This is where I'm selling, right? And, there's a difference between getting the sale and getting the close. So this is the area where I'm advancing the ball, and I'm doing all my activities to probably handle objections, differentiate myself from the competition, put together a winning proposal, right? A pricing win for both sides here, until I get into the last phase, which is the red zone, which again, probably in the sales world, be about 75% probability to 85% probability would be the starting point of the red zone. And then there's where we have to stay laser focused and close it. So that's the framework of this. And certainly there's a lot of details with that, but that's how I look at opportunity management and breaking it down into zones. And I break down then within that, how a lot of people will say, what's your close ratio? And it's, anywhere these days, it seems like between 20 and 30% for the top performing teams. I like to look at the close rates in each of the zones. So yellow zone, what's the close rate to close? Green zone, what's your closer growth? And then again, red zone closers, and they're probably really, really close to 100%. And that's a big difference between somebody that's performing at 80%, as you can know, because at the end of the day, it's a zero-sum game, whether I close or not. The probability doesn't matter if I can't close the deal, right?
Today's growth story is about a leading global cybersecurity company. Even though they're incredibly successful, they struggled with demand generation within an extensive contact database. This problem, they worked with a partner to implement a multi-tactic program that included email, ad retargeting, and inside sales and marketing outreach activities. I hope you're sitting down for this next part, because the program generated an ROI of over 500%. So what kind of partner can deliver these jaw-dropping results? MRP Prolitics. MRP Prolitics is an insights-powered account-based marketing platform with streaming predictive analytics baked into its core. Integrating multi-channel ABM execution on these insights, MRP Prolitics triggers display, email, direct mail, and global inside sales in real time, helping the largest marketing departments in the world deliver the right message to their customers at just the right time. Can MRP Prelytics get similar results for you? Probably. Find out by visiting mrpfd.com or click the link in the episode description of this interview. All right, let's get back to the show.
Right. And so thinking about basically what you're saying, Vince, is looking at that close ratio from deal stage to deal stage, from zone to zone in this case. And those are as important indicators to find out, maybe where there are gaps or where there are cracks in your sales process.
Yeah, because I don't want to punish a salesperson who says, you know what, timing's not right, or it's not qualified, or whatever it is, right? If they want to go ahead and stop that or stall that opportunity, that's okay. What I really want to see is, as you're progressing the deal along, is that you're substantially increasing your probability to close. And specifically, at what point are you almost 100%? And the sellers will be at different points. So I think the thing here is, if you do a great job of qualifying, you do a great job of selling, you'll do a great job of closing.
Yeah. I've seen a lot of data and commentary lately about, the fact that, really your probability for closing, the things that really impact that are the things that you're doing in the qualifying stage well before you're getting, close to the goal line. Sounds like that's very true in your experience as well.
Well, yeah. And then again, I can go back to the football thing. And it's Thursday, by the way, Logan. So we got a game on tonight. So in football, the game starts with a kickoff. How many times does a kickoff lead to a touchdown? Very rare, right? It's the same thing in sales. Like, how many times do you get a lead today and it's going to close really quickly? Now, obviously, transactional sales, you get closed in minutes, hours, whatever it is. But I'm talking about enterprise sales. You don't get a lead and close it in a day. You have work to do. You have to put together the playbook, the plays, to be able to move it down and close it. Now, I'm 100% believer, man. If you don't do the first part right, you might as well just punt, right? You have to do the qualification. You have to put the work in to build the relationship, put the work in, discovery calls, needs analysis, whatever you want to call it. Critical part, obviously.
Yeah. I don't know if we're getting too deep into the analogy here, but from a football perspective, it's like, if you're not doing well on first down to set yourself up with short second and third down yardage, you're not usually converting and getting first downs. And so, the way that translates for me is that, you're usually not going to run a kickoff back and close a deal, overnight in an enterprise sales environment. Yeah. If you do, then the crowd goes nuts, right? Just like in football. But it's that incremental stages and that progress through the playbook that gets you there. This other idea that, I think pairs nicely with this analogy between football and sales that you talked about leading up to this interview, Vince, was, not letting the clock expire before you close. Tell us a little bit about this, and let's take the analogy a little bit further, because I think there's something to dig into there.
Yeah, and thank you for continuing the analogy with football. You're ready to become a red zone seller, I can tell, Logan. So, in sales, time is the enemy, right? The longer the deal takes to close, and yes or no, the odds are against you closing, right? So don't take it for granted at the end of the process, in the red zone, that you need to keep the activities going. You need to keep the momentum going. You need to keep your foot on the pedal, and don't take it for granted. I love this example, right? Hey, just had a great call with the customer. We got a verbal, it's a done deal, right? That's when I hear that. No. I would act like the work's just beginning. And if I can get it to close 24 hours quicker or a week earlier or whatever it is, I would progress that to get it closed as fast as possible, because weird things happen, as you know, right?
Yeah.
A person could lose their job. They might file for bankruptcy. Something bad. There's so many things you can't control, but what you can control, if you set up the relationship right and define the process, is closing it, right? And that's my last point about this, that make sure you have agreement with the prospect, and then you can help control time. If you don't have agreement on the process with the prospect, it's hard to control time, isn't it?
Yeah. And I can't get away from the analogy here. Funny things happen at the 2-yard line, right? Super Bowl example again, interceptions happen when you could run the ball 2 yards and get it across the goal line, right? Sorry for any Seahawks fans listening to this, that I'm poking a bruise there, but you're exactly right. I've seen a lot of people that stop at that. I got a verbal, and they relax and they think, okay, it's clear sailing from here. But a lot of funky things, just like in football, a fumble, an interception, whatever, can happen. A lot of things can happen to derail a deal before you make sure you get it across the goal line.
Yeah, nothing's worse than, right, you submit the contract, they tell you it's in red line, but it's taking a longer period of time than you thought, and they went cold on you. The alarm bells would be going off. Out, let's regather, let's regroup. There's something not right here, right? Sometimes silence is okay, but most times it's not. So, and then, again, I go back to this, and I've been in sales for a long time and managed a lot of great sellers, and all the great ones that I've worked with have always have a sense of urgency at the end, right? They felt anxious. They weren't settled until the thing was signed and that, the kickoff meeting or the onboarding was set, right? They even follow through on that process. That's a big difference between red zone sellers and the average salesperson. The average salesperson kind of lets his foot off or lets her foot off the pedal, and takes it for granted it's going to happen. And that's not a good thing to do, for sure.
Yeah, I think there are a lot of things that both, salespeople and sales leaders can take from this conversation, Vince. You talked about looking at your close ratio from deal stage to deal stage, or from zone to zone across the field, if we want to take it on the analogy side, and not just what is your close rate from lead to close, because that's indicative of something, but digging in a little bit further is going to help you figure out where is your process broken, where do you need to coach reps on which phase of the deal to work on their skill set, and obviously continuing to stay focused to get the deal across the goal line, and making sure that you don't just kind of go into coast mode for those last 5 years for your sale.
And so what we do at Sales at Scale is, we take this methodology and we actually customize it for the startups that we work with. So as you can imagine, Logan, with each of these steps in each of these zones, there's specific things that we outline from here's the action we should take, and here's the specific, next steps you should have with each one of these things. And also tied to that, we also talk about here's some questions or objections you might run into this in this situation or this stage. Here's the options we have. So again, we're going to go back to the analogy. There are certain plays that you have to use based on the certain situation, right? So we map all this together because, again, stuff happens, but are you prepared when you get that kind of hiccup, or you took a penalty for 10-yard loss? Do you have a 1st and 20 play? Or are you going to punt, right? So we customize this because, I'm not here to talk to you about any silver bullets. I don't believe in such a thing in sales, right? You have to plan, have a plan and execute at the end of the day, right?
Yeah, absolutely. I think if it doesn't come back to that, then your odds for success are going to be very, very slim. Well, Vince, this has been a great conversation. I love talking sales and I love talking football, and we combined both of those in one interview today. So for me, this was definitely a win. If anybody listening to this, whether they're in sales, marketing, or at football with you, I guess, what would be a good way for them to reach out and follow up with you, Vince?
Yeah, sure. I'm happy to talk football, but I'm even happier to talk about, helping you grow your business. So you can visit my website, which is called Sales at Scale. So it's salesatscale.com. I also, by the way, as you know, Logan, have a podcast I started called Best Selling Podcast. That's another way you can engage with me and start a conversation. And if anyone wants any more clarity on this red zone selling, happy to get into the details a lot deeper than we did today.
Awesome. Well, Vince, thanks so much for coming on the show. Really enjoyed the conversation.
Thank you, Logan. Appreciate it.
Digital marketing agencies have a tough job. You have to stay on top of the latest marketing strategies for your clients and your agency. What if there was a way you could address both at the same time? Imagine your agency putting out content with greater quality and quantity. Envision bringing your clients a turnkey solution for one of B2B marketing's fastest growing media strategies, podcasting. You know, all those clients asking for your help with their account-based marketing efforts? Picture being the first to bring them the idea of content-based networking, showing them the proven strategy for breaking into their most coveted accounts. Here's the concept. Sweetfish Media is looking to work with a limited number of innovative agencies interested in a new partnership.
We produce a podcast for your agency at no cost. You introduce the power of podcasting and Sweetfish services to your clients. Everybody wins. Learn more at sweetfishpartners.com.